Everyone has the right to decide if and when to have sex. We also have the right to use contraception. And as women in the early stages of pregnancy, we have the right to choose whether to have a baby or to terminate the pregnancy. Not to mention our right to good maternal health care. And these are our sexual and reproductive rights. They sound great on paper, but sadly, in reality, thousands of women become mothers unwillingly, and hundreds die in childbirth each year. Why? With us to discuss this are Qetani Mahlangu, Gauteng, MEC for Health. Dr. Mahubane Ramukhale Zungu, Head of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Edenvale Hospital and an advisor to national government on maternal deaths and sexual health. Lebogang Mutsumi is an HIV and sexual health activist. Dorcas Sekabate is from SATU, the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Sibongile Msimang from the Moral Regeneration Movement. And Marian Stevens of the Sexual and Reproductive Justice Coalition. And also with us are Whitney Chinogwenya from Mari Stopes Clinic and Professor Elna McIntosh, a midwife and sexologist, and many other experts and activists. And our audience is full of young people concerned about their sexual and reproductive rights, as well as parents and teachers. Welcome to you all. So you at home can have your say on Facebook and on Twitter. But before we begin our debate, take a look at this.
Birth. A new life starts. A moment of joy. And yet, this is also a traumatic experience that thousands of women do not survive. In South Africa, 140 women die for every 100,000 births. That's over 30 times more than in Sweden. Why? Lebogang Motsumi started being sexually active at 13. When she was 15, she fell pregnant. She went for a backstreet termination of pregnancy in Alexandra, near Johannesburg.
They started by the first girl and I was the last and everyone was screaming. And listening to everyone screaming when they came to me, I thought I was going to chicken out, but I went through with it and of course I screamed myself. It was very painful. It wasn't nice.
The termination of pregnancy failed and she gave birth at a government hospital in Johannesburg.
I think he really only lived for 2 months because he was born weighing 900 grams and he survived for 2 months and then he passed away. And yeah.
Lebo is lucky to be alive. Teenagers account for 2 out of every 5 maternal deaths in South Africa. Globally, teens are several times more likely to die in childbirth because of their physical vulnerability and age. Yet young women should be able to make safe and informed choices. The Bill of Rights says everyone has a right to bodily and psychological integrity, including the right to make decisions concerning reproduction. Of what use are these rights if we don't know about them? There is sex education in school, but some believe it starts too late.
Those discussions should start very early. We should talk about comprehensive sexuality education. If a woman is not informed, she does not know. So she needs well-informed health professionals, non-judgmental type of attitude, and for her to be able to make those choices.
Most young women can't get to the clinics.
The location, it's a problem because then the service isn't there where she normally, or at least within 5 kilometers of where she lives, so that she can easily be able to get a service.
And many women and girls don't know the contraceptives that are available to them.
I didn't know I had other options besides just that injection, that there were pills and other options that I could really use, which I would have really taken had I known at the time. It's things that need to be taught to girls because, yeah, there's a gap.
There are some that believe young people shouldn't even be allowed to terminate their pregnancies.
My personal view is that abortions are not good for anybody. Some girls have scars for the rest of their lives, trauma, PTSD. I believe that we should emulate Uganda, which has both lowered its HIV infection rate and teenage pregnancy rate by focusing on ABCs, which is abstinence before marriage, being faithful. If you can't do those two things, then condomize.
The truth is, young people are not abstaining. And the government admits that the messaging doesn't work.
When HIV started biting in sub-Saharan Africa, we taught ABC. We know by now that that didn't happen, because if it did, we wouldn't have been here where we are with the HIV/AIDS and even with that teenage pregnancy. And we realized that we've made a mistake. That's why in 2014, we relaunched the family planning program of the strategy of the department.
Even if we get our messaging right, we still need to put the resources into making sure services are accessible so that mothers and babies aren't dying, and that young people are getting what they need.
If you're a young person and walk into a clinic, what do you expect to get from there? Because our health system is not quality at all. What do you as a young person want to expect? Would you rather you get this at school? What is it that you want that would work best for you, and who you want to get it from? Do you want to get it from your peer? Or do you want to get it to someone you can relate to? Or do you want to get it to someone, they're the only people who can answer these questions, which I think would really help a lot.
Dr. Ramokgale Zungu, you advise national government on maternal deaths, on sexual health. Why is the rate of maternal mortality still 30 times higher in South Africa than in some developed countries? Hundreds of women are dying unnecessarily.
A maternal death is a death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days of termination of pregnancy. So from 1998, when we look at South Africa, it was about 150 per 100,000. We have the report that is called the triennial report, which is released every 3 years. So every 3 years, then we look at South Africa as a whole, looking at each province to say that what is the maternal mortality ratio and what are some of the main causes. So looking at about the year 2002, it was about 369. Someone will say that it seems to have increased from 1998, but we have to take into consideration that at that time in 1998, it was still a new process. People were not used to reporting. Then more and more people are starting to report. The latest for 2015, it is 120. So our maternal mortality ratio is actually decreasing in the country.
We promised as part of our Millennium Goals that we'll get that rate down to 40, and we're nowhere near 40. Why are women still continuing to die in the hundreds in South Africa a year?
I think maybe what I can say, Maschaba, first of all, I think from what Dr. Zungu has said, the reports indicate that many women die because of risky pregnancies and partly because of HIV and AIDS related. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face. Secondly, is that women do not come to health facilities on time before the 20 weeks, so that you can identify the risk associated with the pregnancy much early, so that if there's any problems with the pregnancy, you are able to deal with those. And of course, I acknowledge the fact that sometimes our primary healthcare services are difficult, and there's difficulty in getting the quality of care.
But Lebohang, you were sexually active at 13. You fell pregnant at 15. So why is it that young girls are falling pregnant and having babies at such a young age, especially because it's so risky?
As a young girl, I don't understand my sexuality. It's something that nobody talks to me about. And it's to kill the curiousness of the sexual activity itself. What happens when I get sexually engaged? When you start your menstruation, you are told to stay away from boys, but you don't know why. And because I'm curious, I will run after the boy, or the boy, whichever way. You've got these feelings as a young person that you're going through, you don't know how to control. There's the poverty aspect to it, There's so many reasons into this whole thing. The CSE that's lacking at school. We don't have comprehensive sexuality education. There's so many, when you want to access services, you are ridiculed and told about morals. But the fact that I'm at hospital, it means that.
Well, it seems communication, sex education, two very big issues that you've highlighted here. So let's hear from the parents and the young people in the audience right now. What is the best age to start teaching about sex? By show of hands, who says 12 to 14 or older? By show of hands. Okay. And then who says 10, 8 or earlier? Wow. Wow. 10. Okay. Okay. Sir in the back there, please stand up for us. What is the best age, do you think, is to start talking about sex?
I think from 15, 16 upwards. You know why? I've got
Why?
a reason myself. Our mothers, they've never told about sex on the age of 8 or younger than that. Then by so planting a seed in a kid, definitely he will practice it.
All right. Does anyone in the panel want to jump in? Murray?
I think what's useful is to have a discussion about what comprehensive sexuality education is. And when I say age 5, when I was bathing my children, when they were even younger, they knew what the word was for their penis. And they learned what it was. And they learned about how they felt about it, and they learned about feeling good and about feeling bad. They knew if somebody touched their penis without their consent, that was not okay. And that is what comprehensive sexuality education is. It's not talking about what goes where and what goes whatever. That's what we need to understand.
Mebongi?
In isiZulu, there is a saying that says, "Lugotshwa lusemanzi." Ngoba uma lomile luyephuka. So we need to be proactive and not wait until the damage is done. They are sexually active. They are children of a different era. If we don't talk to them, someone will talk to them. And more often than not, that will be a recipe for disaster.
Med Dorcas, I'd like to bring you in here for a second. In order to make the choice about whether to have sex, we need knowledge. And it's becoming quite apparent, especially from the responses of the audience here today, that we should probably start having had these conversations by the age of 10. So why is it that teachers are still reluctant to talk about sex in clear detail?
What is happening, life orientation is one of the subjects that is not given attention, unfortunately, in our schools. It happens to be one of the subjects. If you allocate subjects, you start with your mathematics, physical science, and then if you have a teacher who has less periods, then you give that teacher LO. You throw that teacher into that subject, and you haven't skilled the teacher to be able to talk to young learners. And the other thing that I need to bring in is a large cohort of teachers that we have in our system are between the ages of 40 and 57. And you must look at the background of those teachers. Yeah. They grew up being told that sex is taboo. You can't talk about sex. But also the message in our LO textbooks is a message of fear. It's a message that tells young people that you must not do this, you must not do this, you must not do this.
Because we're afraid we're going to plant the seed, as the gentleman said in the audience.
Number one, the government has taken discipline in the home from the parents to say, if you discipline your children, they must, take you to court. Exactly. And so parents are actually afraid to even discipline their own children.
No, but that's incorrect.
Okay.
It's unconstitutional to abuse your child.
It's not about abuse. No. It's how parents discipline their children. If you don't train up your children well when they're still young.
But government is not in your house.
Yeah, but
Thank you very much.
It's fine.
And in my house, I'm the government.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's no more fear of God. Okay? But the main thing is, we're talking about the girls, but what about the boys? Because it starts off with the boys. The boys were never taught to accept no from a girl. Yes. Everybody's talking about girls, but nobody's talking about the boys.
So you have a problem with contraception and abortion?
No, contraception is that it is there, but it's not 100% effective. We do know there are failure rates. And also to take contraception.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
What type of contraception?
We've got different contraceptives. We've got the injection, we've got tablets, we've got patches, we've got loops, we've got implants, okay? And we know each one has a side effect. Okay. And not every woman can use the same thing, okay? And number two, it takes discipline and consistency in using the contraception. So you tell me a 13-year-old or 12-year-old will remember to take a pill every day at the same time.
I think this is the messaging that I personally like to fight against. Yes. We need to have information of the options available free to the young people. They need to know that, maybe you won't be able to remember to take the pill every day, but there's a method that you don't have to remember. Get the IUCD that is in there and it works for 3 years. Get the implant. So I think this is the messaging that personally I fight against, because we are limiting people's options, and we need young people to know the information of all the options that are available to them.
All right. Thank you very much. What is your name, sir?
My name is Sinaba Mngonya. My sisters, my mothers, the little girls that get pregnant is because when they go to these clinics, they've got nurses, doctors who go there and want to pull out the Bibles and judge them. It ought to be treated with the contempt that it deserves. Okay, the women have the choices, and yes, us as males, we are too in the wrong. We ought to learn to take no. No means no. And in the same light, also to the gentleman over there who mentioned something about giving sex talk at age 15.
16.
16, oh dear God. I don't know if you read the recent court judgment from the Western Cape High Court with respect to the consensual age of sex, which has actually been lowered to 12 and 14. 12 for girls, 14 for boys. And you want to have this talk at 16. Shocking. Shocking. Despicable.
Because his mother had the talk at 16.
Of course, that is shocking. Young people grow up much quicker than back then. This is the 21st century, not the 20th century. And we ought to behave in such a manner. And as Mama said, and I love what you said, Mama, prevention is better than cure.
Thank you.
Let us correct it now before it's too late.
When we return, some poetry, and we ask why young women are turning to dangerous backstreet health services which could kill them. Don't go away.
Her ovaries keep hatching a bastard son, raising beautiful flowers, a bundle of joy that wilts before birth. When pregnancy is that secret you don't want to keep, so you kill its rumors, and hearsay speaks in cavity walls with ears, drumming kicks and screams to the floor. Tom's vocals slurred in the umbilical cord that strings his dead beat. What will his ghost speak when he and his protruding siblings meet? Will they shake the spirit of Tom's chopped hands, tying fallopian tubes into ribbons inside her womb to remember that he was once a gift from God's agenda, grown in the wrong placenta? It takes a second to come, but a lifetime to raise a son. Tom, shorthand for tomb. This is where she plants her ovum. A hysterectomy was overdue, so they excavated her womb, digging fetal bones that were never traced to patriarchal homes, 'cause they hadn't begun teething. Ashes to ashes, uterus to dust. Every single day, a fatherless skull gets crushed, and all that remains when the sonar scans the grave is a casket of lust, lowering a mother's love deep inside the ground where her ghost child, begs the street to show him the path of his father's prince, so he could say, before he finally rests in peace, I've got my daddy's feet.
Welcome back to the big debate. I'm Masachaba Ndlovu. We're talking about sexual and reproductive health, and that was Mandi Poefficient Vundla. Mandi, come on up, stand up here, girl. That was amazing. Round of applause for Mandi. Join me here. Okay. Why did you choose that particular poem for today's show?
The poem was actually inspired by a friend who had an abortion because she realized that actually she was firstly too young for this, and secondly, the father was in prison. She realized at a very early stage that I can't do this on my own. And because we live in a society of just judgmental people, right? And we're so quick to say, no, abortion is wrong, but we're not in that person's shoes and we're not in their circumstances. So how are we then deciding for them what's wrong or what's right for them, right? So that poem was inspired by that entire experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
A round of applause for that. And just more generally on issues of access to contraception, sex education, what are your thoughts?
Look, I am with everybody who says it should start at an early age, right? Because I feel like there's a certain sense of like censorship that happens to the woman's body at a very early age, right? I mean, we're not told to look at ourselves, to touch ourselves. The conversation begins now only because I'm starting my period. And even then, that conversation is still censorship because it's saying, and it's also surrounded around boys, right? So it's not even about my body. Parents forget that they were once teenagers.
Yeah.
They've developed this sudden convenient amnesia, right? Where they've forgotten that the things that we do, they were doing, right? Now you get told about God, and I'm just like, but God didn't even work in your situation. Culture didn't even work in your situation. And that's the truth, right? And so now you're here trying to discipline me with a structure that you didn't even abide by. What makes you think it's going to work for me?
Yes. Our Constitution gives women the right to make choices that affect their bodies. And that should include having access to safe, high-quality health services, including abortion. But Lebohang Mutsumi made a very tough choice at age 15. She decided to terminate her pregnancy by going for a backstreet abortion. Lebohang, how well informed were you about your choices in terms of access to these services?
I think I knew very well that one needs to go to the clinic to access contraceptions. But of course, I didn't know what my choices were. I only knew about the injection because that's what I would hear people talking about. And in terms of accessing a termination, I knew again I had to go to the clinic. But when I did go to the clinic, I was told I'm late. Only the first 20 are helped on that day. And I should come back the next day at 5 o'clock in the morning. How am I walking at 5 o'clock in the morning to the clinic by myself? And I decided then, let me hustle some money and go to a backstreet abortion, which I heard from a friend of mine who once did that also. And she told me it's very quick and it's just get over and done situation.
Was it quick?
Yes, it was.
But it didn't work?
It didn't work.
Tell us about that.
It's a private doctor. But these ladies were stealing the hour where the doctor goes to go pray and they do the abortions. It was not legal at all. Because I remember when we got there, the doctor was not there. We were told to come at 12 o'clock, if not 1. I really forgot. But it was very quick because there was about 10 of us. And the one lady would go in and just insert whatever she was inserting. I even forgot what it was. But it was something very white and very painful. And 5 minutes, it was over and done with. You were told to go home. And if you experience pain or start bleeding, you then take that white thing out and go to the hospital and act as if it's a miscarriage. That's the advice that I had gotten. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. I just had very excruciating pain. I can remember it was a very horrible weekend. And I think I was close to death because I did not have strength at all. And my mom thought, let me rush you to the hospital. And at the hospital, I told them what happened. I could not lie, of course. And they did help me and they closed my womb up because it was just open and nothing really happened. And I then gave birth 7 months. At 7 months, I gave birth to a premature baby. So the backstreet abortion didn't work because, again, there was no counseling when I got there.
Thank you. I mean, MEC, this is horrific. And you have to take responsibility that women are making these choices, because the truth is abortions, safe abortions, legal abortions are not that easily accessible.
I think what we have on paper and what we're supposed to have in our facility, clearly there's a disjuncture, because in all the 35 community healthcare centers, and I think throughout the country, there are designated clinics which are bigger, not the smaller clinic that are providing a TOP, but also in every hospital that provides general services, these services are being provided. And I think there's a lesson from what Lebu has said. Also, I think the important thing, and I'm probably many of you have heard me talking on radio, on everywhere else about this, that the attitude of our staff, I think, remains one of the biggest challenges. And I think
I'm so happy you raised that.
So
it's a life and death matter, MEC, and I'd like to know what it is you're doing to fix the attitudes on the ground, because we hear too many stories about nurses. It is shocking.
We started off talking about maternal mortality, and we focus 34% or so around HIV. But what we're not talking about is that around 9.5, 10% deaths actually are happening from unsafe abortions, and we are grateful to have you alive here, Lebogang. I mean, this is the reality. Black women are dying from unsafe abortions in 2016 in South Africa. We need to be able to find out information around the different abortion options. What is medical abortion? What is surgical abortions? Where are the designated facilities? What am I going to experience in terms of pain, in terms of bleeding? If I'm HIV positive, what special measures must happen or not happen?
Elna, so you are a midwife, you are a sexologist, and you perform abortions of up to 12 weeks at the DISA clinic. Why are women forced to pay for these services? I mean, is this not their constitutional right?
It is much easier to get pills off the street. Cytotec is on the lips of everybody, and that is seen as a medical abortion. It is advertised. You just have to go onto the internet. Up to 8 months, women are told the baby will dissolve. And so in our clinic, what we see literally the women that have had illegal abortions are literally dragged into our facility. We stabilize them, and then we try and get admission in a hospital. Hospitals do not want patients that have illegal abortions. You have to disclose this, but so often they are bled out. And then the system of, does she have a medical aid? Easy to transport her. Does she not have one? What facility wants her? And often they have to, the gynae wards are full, they have to line casualty. The biggest problem, for me, the debate should be about how do we get rid of illegal abortions in a country where it's been legal for 20 years. It is easier. We see them everywhere. Mama Titi, Dr. So-and-so, this and that. Well, it's a bad name. Hey, it's a bad name.
Thank you very much. We'll come to you in just a second, and to you. MEC, we're in a crisis.
I mean, you've heard about people claiming that they are qualified doctors, they're qualified this and that, who come up from all over the world, which is part of the problem. So I think where we found that indeed there are those kind of illegal places, we've got to make sure that first of all, we deal with those that we see advertised all over and follow them through. But every important thing is when women want to do abortion and they've got difficulties in the clinic, I'm accessible 24/7. You can call me on my mobile, you can call me and our team, I'll provide my details at the end of the day. We must ensure that no woman or a young girl loses life simply because they want to terminate pregnancy.
Thank you very much. We have a young lady here who's got her hand up. Please stand up. What is your name?
I'm Ipileng. Young ladies are using an abortion as a contraceptive, and it's a reality. Currently, where I live right now, there's been more than 4 cases where a fetus was found in the toilet or in the drain. So how do we deal with such things? And we have young girls between the age of 12 years and 15 years, that's underage already, that are giving birth, that are roaming the streets of Langlaagte, drinking alcohol, and there's a lot of what we call blessers. Can parents please stop being ignorant? You can't see your child walk in dressed up in however clothes that you know you cannot afford yourself and be ignorant to it. You cannot look at your daughter, walk in with a sneaker of 1 point something and be like, she's a hustler. There's no such thing. Can we also stop being ignorant to that?
Thank you very much.
If a woman or a young girl or an adolescent goes in for a repeat abortion, it's our failure. We need to be providing contraception that works for women. And it gets back to the question of providing young girls with information about how your body works. And often young girls will have been on the injection. It takes their period away, they're irregular, they don't quite know what's happening. They then might get pregnant, they go and have an abortion, and then there's very little counselling in the state services. We've heard about the quality of care. What contraception are they being given? They might be given the injection, again, which would be 6 weeks or 3 months. And then what happens?
I think abortion should be the last option and the last resort. It shouldn't be encouraged. But however, there are instances where we understand, like instances of rape, of incest, of sexual abuse, and so on. Now, the problem is that it has long-term effects. Effects like cancer, STIs, stigmatization, and the conscience that the person would live and have to deal with.
Now, the reality is, Mama, if I may just interject, the reality is that it is every woman's constitutional right to choose.
Yes, whilst we understand it's a constitutional right, but remember, rights have got good intentions. Sometimes there are unintended consequences of those good intentions.
We need to trust women. And I think we are debating this because it is a service for women. We need to trust women that with information, they will be able to make their choices. And I think the problem is that we want to police women's bodies. Mothers want to police it, men want to police it, society wants to police it. When it is a law and we have messages that are scary, we are actually promoting illegal abortions.
All right, thank you. There's a young lady over there, and then I'll come to you, sir, with your hand up, and then Doctor will give you an opportunity to speak. Please stand up for us. What is your name?
My name is Bonala Bakava, a grade 11 student. I think we can have this talk at the end of the day, it lies within you. The decision lies with a young girl. Now, if we're going to make noise and police like our bodies and tell us what to do and what not to do, we should have an open conversation with a lot of women that are experienced and know what they're talking about. Okay, fine. From my experience, like our LO teacher at school, we're having a lesson on sex, and she didn't want to go into detail. When I asked her, like, ma'am, why? And she was like, no, you my children. You don't have to do these things. And I was like, but there are persons who are experimenting it in class.
And she is in a position, she has to teach you, and she says she doesn't want to teach you the details.
That's what I asked her, and then she was like, no, you my babies. And I was like, at the end of the day, we young, we want to know. If you don't teach us, we would want to go out and experiment it.
Thank you. So when we return, we meet some young women who are taking their sexual and reproductive rights into their hands. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the big debate on reproductive rights. I'm Masachaba Ndlovu. Thousands of girls in South Africa become pregnant each year, and many of those struggle to access quality health services. Do they have an alternative? Shemaine van den Heefer comes from Kurumani in the Northern Cape, where she helped to establish girls' clubs in 4 schools.
One of the clubs, they call themselves the English Roses. When we found them in 2012, they were already there. So we didn't start them, they started themselves. And out of that 12 girls, 1 fell pregnant, she had the baby, and she returned to school. And all of the others is at university. We are very proud. That shows that rural kids can also get somewhere if we could only have access to more facilities, opportunities, and especially if the healthcare facilities can be youth-friendly.
Wow.
They are not youth-friendly because it's my aunt that works there. So when I go there, how do I tell my aunt at the age of 12 that I'm pregnant? The whole town and the city and mother and the Bible, as she said, will be laid in front of me because I was raised that way.
Thank you. Dr. Zungu, I mean, this is clearly a social justice issue, isn't it? We're failing poor black women in this country.
I think that we need to work together as a community and as a country. Let's not just look as government only, because there is so much that government can do. Government can have all the training programs, but from what sitting here having a discussion, I think that it is a start to say that let us look into the community. We are having parents who are not talking to their children. How do we empower those parents? We are having teachers who have to teach at school, but they are not empowered. So as a country, we need to come together and say that how do we strengthen all the services so that at the end of the day, we'll also be able to empower the young ones.
It is such a shame to hear all of you talk about abortion and all of these other cases, not actually coming down to how we prevent the situation. I mean, clearly, if you give us proper emotional intelligence regarding ourselves and our bodies, I guess we wouldn't be considering abortion and all of that. And let us not forget that a girl does not get pregnant alone. I mean, there is no girl in earth who has sperms and both eggs at the same time. So what I'm saying is that when Lebo said that we lack self-identity and our relationships, let's remove the relationship part and let's be realistic about this. It is society, right, that raises a child. I was told that I'm going to be raised by my community and my mom. So what I see around me is what will definitely determine who I am. I've seen girls getting drunk at younger than me. You won't believe how girls actually tend to risky behavior because of they think it's the only way out. The only way out is when you give them proper emotional intelligence.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. When we return, we look for more solutions. You're watching The Big Debate. Welcome back to The Big Debate. I'm Masachaba Ndlovu. Reproduction and birth are part of the cycle of life. Can we ensure that all women in South Africa, including young women, can look forward to the support that they need to make the choices when it comes to sex and reproduction? What do you think?
I'm also an educator, and I'm very young to stand in front of a class and talk about sex. Because again, we have a challenge of having male teachers who actually have relationships with young girls. So imagine you are a male, you are talking to girls about sex, and some of these kids, they are very old. They look at you as a boyfriend or as a potential sugar daddy or as a blesser. So I'm saying that, again, I'm appealing to the department, whether you are sending the Department of Education to put this into the curriculum, we must have activities in schools whereby we are going to say we are calling old people, we are calling Abo Mama to come and talk to the girls. We are calling Abo Baba to come and talk to the boys. Otherwise, as educators, we are still young as well. We still need to be educated. So we cannot be expected to raise the kids that are supposed to be raised by their parents.
Even parents have got a problem. Sometimes you have this expectation that they'll rise to these challenges. These are challenges for this country. And I even feel bad for the government because you have just had a very, very kind of different sections of people, different thinking, different orientation as well. So I'm saying therefore to you, MEC, as a challenge to the government, there are organizations in communities that are formed. Encourage that, because this is what we are hearing from the young people. They are able to talk alone. Encourage that. Let the parents also be part of that. Fund these programs so that they are really being there. Otherwise, we won't be able to match the challenge. We'll always come here and return everything.
What we need to be doing as well is considering other people who aren't sitting here, who don't have the voices that we do to speak about this. Firstly, I think we need to consider the LGBT groups. There are transgender people who would love the opportunity to have access to sexual and reproductive health, but they don't because they're judged. And when they go there, most of the nurses, most of the doctors don't even know about transgender issues. And secondly, I feel like I'm doing my master's in sign language, and deaf people are having a huge problem problem just going to the clinic and being able to speak to their doctors, able to communicate about the needs of their community. And as a deaf woman, going into a hospital, trying to give birth and not being able to communicate with a doctor is a huge problem. They don't have access to contraception because they can't communicate. So I think as well, the Department of Health, the Department of Education, we need to make these issues bigger and speak to the communities that aren't here and don't have the voices that we do.
We conducted research looking at education around menstruation within schools, as well as the issue of access to sanitary pads and the impact that it has on some of the female learners who miss school because they don't have access to sanitary pads. For example, some of the female learners that we interviewed indicated missing school 3 to 4 times a month. And that is a direct impact on their education. However, there is still a stigma around education or discussion around menstruation, and it needs to be open, an open discussion. I mean, we even interviewed and had discussion with male learners, and many of them indicated not wanting to be involved in such discussion, and this should not be the case.
I think the problem lies with society in terms of what is the language that is spoken on the streets. I don't like the tone that is being used generally, this thing Yama Plesa. Because when looking at Alexandra specifically as it is, we've got so many challenges, socio-economical challenges, that you find these young girls dropping out of school, not attending to school, so it is a societal problem.
After the break, closing comments from our panelists. Welcome back to the big debate. Let's hear from our panel. Dorcas.
Okay. The message that we want to close with is, number one, is for tertiary institutions to train teachers to be able to deal with the education landscape and to deal with learners. The second thing is, we wish LO can be strengthened because most of the time the messaging in LO textbooks is about damage, it's about fear, it's about all these things. And the other thing, that subject needs to be taken serious so that it can give us the intended results that we had when we introduced this subject. The last thing is teachers also need support. And we're calling on parents, don't be absent in the upbringing of your children, because many of the times the upbringing of children is left to educators alone and parents are absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Zungu.
Looking at maternal mortality ratio and decreasing it, it's a priority. And one of the things is prevention of unwanted pregnancy. And that starts with education, even of learners, starting also with going to contraception, and also so that people are aware of the legal services for TOP that are provided. And lastly, one of the things is that we should all work together with the Department of Health so that we'll be able to decrease the maternal mortality in this country.
Thank you.
So it's really gratifying to hear young people and women talk about their sexual health, talk about their need for information. It is your right. You have a right to your sexual health. You have a right to sexual pleasure as young people and as a woman. And secondly, I just want to say we would love to work with the Department of Health. It's sometimes quite difficult to talk about these issues around contraception and abortion. We'd love to work with you more closely, and in particular with the She Conquer campaign. We want to see quality contraception, all methods, not just the injection, not just the implement. We want to see young girls being offered the IUCD if they want that. We want to see greater methods. We want to see better informed consent so that we don't ever hear anybody say that young people have repeat abortions. And we also want She Conquers to include abortion as a central programmatic feature. It's funded by other people who might not want abortion in it, but this is South Africa, and abortion is legal, and it should be central on that program.
Thank you.
The issues of blessers There's also a new trend of bankers' parties. They happen in our midst, under our noses. Let's make noise. Let's confront such behavior. And I want to make an appeal to blessers. Save our children and save our nation. You had your chance. You were blessed with education and with material welfare. Don't use your blessings to destroy our children.
Lebo?
I want to talk about issues of the Bible, virginity testing and everything. Those are morals that you can't enforce on young people. I will not sit here and enforce my morals on anybody, but I will use what I've been through as a young woman who's also living with HIV to say, try and avoid the path, and if you do take the path, know that there is life after all. Number 2, integrating CSE and adolescent youth-friendly health services, which is quality. That is something we need to do, and it's very urgent, MEC, like very, 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 very urgent. We need accountability as young people. Be accountable for your own actions. At the end of the day, it is your life that you are living, because we can feed you information, we can tell you everything, but it's up to you at the end of the day what you do with that information. We all need to work together and stop working against each other. We have so many campaigns that speak against each other. It's become a competition of campaigns. Young people are becoming confused. Do I go with green or with red or with yellow? Which one do I go with? Let's work together and all speak the same language.
Thank you. MEC?
There's platform that exists in community. How do we ensure that those platforms, we put them together as you've done here? This is a very brilliant concept to make sure that we strengthen our communication and make sure that we talk to the diverse nature of our society, because we can't reach everybody with the same message. But if we segment ourselves, we'll be in a position to talk to one another. MEC Lesufi has introduced smart boards in schools. How do we use those platforms as well as tablets, use those platforms to talk to young people, because now they're from grade 8 up to grade 12. So that's one platform that we must use to talk to young boys and girls about the issues of sexuality and all of that. Just the last 2 issues. The first thing, I think, about the strengthening of health services, I fully agree, and all the sentiments that have been raised here is something that we're taking to heart. Going back, we've got to ensure that we improve inspection of those who are providing legal abortions. Those who are doing illegal, we must claim that and claim that tomorrow. And I think the other issue relating to quality of healthcare services, the attitude of staff, we must continue to deal with it so that young girls and boys, when they go to our facilities, they should be able to get the quality services. And I think last, just to say that, as I'm saying, this is a very important platform. We need to look at what other subjects to probe so that we can be able to allow South Africans in their diversity to use this platform and be able to talk to one another constructively. Thank you very much.
When a woman in South Africa gives birth, her life is much more at risk than in any other parts of the world. And millions of young women don't have access to the health services that they need to make those informed choices about reproduction. Can we ensure that everyone has their sexual and reproductive rights? You decide. And thank you for watching The Big Debate.